Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're diving into the life of a man whose legacy is, well, literally etched into the very fabric of Islamic history. We're talking about a truly monumental soul, a real pillar of steadfastness. His story represents one of the most profound social and spiritual revolutions in human history. We're exploring the remarkable life of Bilal ibn Rabah. May Allah be pleased with him. Let's trace his incredible journey and see exactly how a deeply marginalized man ended up altering the course of history forever. Crushed under a heavy stone in the burning desert sand, he refused to surrender his soul. This is the man whose voice became the heartbeat of Islam. Just let that sink in for a second. We're starting right in the absolute crucible of his suffering. Because honestly, you just can't understand the incredible heights this man reached without first understanding the immense, crushing weight he was forced to bear. So let's dive into this and uncover exactly where this unbelievable resilience came from.
Section 1. The Test of Fire, the Crucible in the Makkah Desert.
To truly grasp Bilal's resilience, we have to transport ourselves to the sun-scorched desert of Makkah. Bilal was enslaved by Umayyah ibn Khalaf, who was a really fierce enemy of the early Muslim faith. When Umayyah found out about Bilal's secret acceptance of Islam, he unleashed absolute brutality. He would literally drag Bilal out into the midday sun, place massive, scorching boulders right on his chest, and demand that he worship idols. But Bilal, he met this unimaginable torture with just pure, unwavering spiritual defiance. He didn't scream, he didn't beg, he simply repeated the phrase we're looking at right here. Ahad, Ahad, which means the one, the one. You see, this wasn't just a basic statement of faith. It was an act of supreme resistance that completely disrupted the power of his oppressors.
Moving on to Section 2. The Slave of Makkah. Origins of a Resilient Soul.
So, to really understand the man beneath that heavy stone, we need to loop back to his origins. He was born into a society that was strictly divided by brutal tribalism, a rigid caste system, and deep-seated racism. Bilal was born into chattel slavery around 580 CE. His mother, Hama, was an Abyssinian princess who'd been captured and enslaved, and his father, Rabah, was an Arab. Now, despite his paternal Arab lineage, the Meccan aristocracy weaponized his maternal Abyssinian heritage just to keep him at the absolute bottom of the social hierarchy. They used this racialized marginalization to deny him any social standing whatsoever, regularly mocking him as Ibn Sauda, the son of the black woman. They treated him as property, but despite all of that, he carried himself with an incredible, undeniable inner dignity.
Right, so taking a look at this timeline, we can trace the chronological arc of his remarkable life. We start with his birth in 580 CE, then his conversion to Islam around 615 CE, which of course triggered that massive persecution. Then we see his migration, or hijra, to Medina in 622, his triumphant return to Makkah in 630, and finally, his passing in Damascus in 640 CE. We're going to walk through these pivotal moments together to see exactly how he transformed from a marginalized slave into a global symbol of faith.
All right, Section 3. The Gift of Freedom, a Brother in Belief.
Okay, so going back to that blazing desert where Bilal was being tortured, this is exactly where the narrative completely shifts from suffering to liberation. News of his unbreakable spirit actually reached the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who then sent his close companion Abu Bakr as-Siddiq to intervene. Now take a look at the number right here, 280. That is the amount in dirhams, also recorded in historical sources as 7 alqiyah, that Abu Bakr paid to purchase Bilal's freedom. He negotiated this really heavy sum not to own him, but to immediately set him free for the sake of Allah.
This exchange just brilliantly illustrates the massive paradigm shift that was happening at the time. Umayyah, trying to demean Bilal one last time, sneered that he would have sold him for just a single ounce of gold. But Abu Bakr's response was totally definitive. He said, "By Allah, if you had refused to sell him except for 100 ounces, I would have paid it." Wow. In that single exchange, we see how the early Muslim community was completely redefining human worth. To Umayyah, Bilal was just disposable property, but to Abu Bakr, Bilal was a priceless brother in belief.
Section 4. The First Muezzin. So now, a free man, Bilal migrated with the Muslims to Medina, where he was elevated to a sacred position that honestly perfectly matched the beauty of his soul. As the community was growing, they really needed a way to call people to prayer. After a companion had a dream detailing the exact words of the Adhan, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, specifically chose Bilal to deliver it. And why Bilal? Well, because of his deep, captivating, and incredibly melodious voice. The sources actually tell a really beautiful story here.
You see, Bilal had a slight lisp due to his Abyssinian roots, so he pronounced the Arabic letter sheen as seen. When some people tried to mock this, the Prophet severely rebuked them. He declared that Bilal's voice was actually heard and beloved in the heavens because of the sheer purity of his heart and the immense suffering he'd endured for his faith. His voice literally became the heartbeat of daily life in Medina.
Section 5. Atop the Kaaba, the triumphant echo. Let's fast forward a bit to the year 8 AH. The narrative comes completely full circle, right back to the very city where Bilal was once dragged through the streets in chains, the conquest of Makkah. Just imagine this scene for a second. The Muslims have peacefully conquered the city. The idols that Umayyah had once literally tortured Bilal to worship, they've been completely destroyed. And out of everyone present, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, commands Bilal to climb onto the roof of the sacred Kaaba. Standing atop the holiest site in all of Islam, Bilal places his hands over his ears and projects his radiant voice across the entire valley. The very elites who once mocked him, tortured him, and called him the son of a black woman were now standing below, listening to him declare the greatness of God. It was just a moment of supreme, absolutely poetic justice.
Section 6. Equality in Faith, the Eternal Legacy.
You know, Bilal's story isn't just an inspiring biography, it's actually the ultimate proof of how Islam's foundational principles actively dismantled racial and social hierarchies. Just notice the stark contrast we've got here. On one side, we see his status in pre-Islamic Arabia as a demeaned slave. But on the other, his status under Islam, Sayyidul Mu'adhdhinin, the master of the callers to prayer. In fact, the second caliph, Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was a man from the absolute highest nobility of the Quraysh, used to point to Bilal and proudly declare, Abu Bakr is our leader and he freed our leader, Bilal. The Prophet himself explicitly stated that an Arab has no superiority over a non-Arab, nor a white person over a black person, except by piety and good action. Bilal was the living, breathing embodiment of that revolutionary truth.
As we look at the end of his life, it's honestly deeply emotional. After the passing of his beloved prophet, Bilal's grief was just so overwhelming that he couldn't even bear to call the Adhan in Medina anymore. He would literally break down in tears whenever he reached the prophet's name. So he requested to move to Syria to dedicate the rest of his life to guarding the frontiers. Years later, when Caliph Umar visited Syria, the people there begged him to ask Bilal to call the Adhan just one last time. When Bilal finally agreed and his voice rang out, the sources tell us there wasn't a single person in that gathering who didn't weep, remembering the days of the prophet. Bilal passed away peacefully in Damascus in 640 CE. May Allah be pleased with it.
All right, let's synthesize everything we've covered today with these key takeaways. First up, Bilal's life teaches us about truly unbreakable faith and trust in God, even when the literal weight of the world is crushing your chest. Second, it highlights the absolute equality established by Islam, proving once and for all that human worth is tied to righteousness, not your race or social status. Third, it is an absolute masterclass in patience and perseverance. And finally, the power of consistent worship. Actually, the Prophet once told Bilal that he heard his footsteps in paradise, which Bilal humbly attributed to his simple, everyday habit of praying 2 units of prayer after every ablution. Small, sincere acts hold immense value.
I really want to leave you with this final thought today. If a marginalized slave, crushed under a rock in the burning desert, could rise to become the eternal heartbeat of a global faith, well, what barriers can your faith and resilience break today? His voice echoed past the elites of Makkah, past the borders of Arabia, and honestly, it continues to resonate in the hearts of billions right now. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I really hope Bilal's remarkable journey inspires you just as much as it does me. Catch you next time.